All right, so get this. Last night in our Bible study, we went over one of the most fascinating topics I've ever delved into in the scriptures, okay? Now, I have to give a shout out to my buddy Keenan for putting this together. But what I want to look at is the 7 churches in Revelation quickly and how they all relate to the story of salvation in order here. So the 7 churches of the book of Revelation in order are Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamum, Thyatira, Sardis, Philadelphia, and Laodicea. So let's look at this. The first church, the church in Ephesus, you can relate to the Garden of Eden. How? Well, it talks about, in the part where he writes to the church in Ephesus, the words of him who holds the 7 stars in his right hand, who walks among the 7 golden lampstands. You can relate the walking in the garden to God walking with Adam and Eve in the cool of the day, and the 7 golden lampstands to the trees in the Garden of Eden. And then it ends by saying, to him who conquered, I will grant him to eat from the tree of life. Okay, first church. Second church, Smyrna, you can relate to the patriarchs and to Joseph. Here you see this distinction between those who are truly Jews and those who are not in the letter in Revelation. And you can relate this to the patriarchal period where you have this distinction between Isaac and Ishmael, between Jacob and Esau, between Joseph and Judah, okay, which is the one who's the real son of promise. And then it ends by, and at one point it says, behold, the devil's about to throw some of you into prison. You can see this notion of Joseph being thrown into prison there as well, okay? Third church, Pergamum. You can relate to the Exodus and the wilderness wandering. So here you have the story of Balaam and Balak being replayed. Okay, now in the book of Numbers, which again lines up with the wilderness wandering, Balak calls Balaam to pronounce curses on Israel, but God only allows him to pronounce blessing out of his mouth to Israel. So you see that directly lined up here. And then here's your softball home run to relate this church with the wilderness wandering. He says, to him who conquers, I will give him some of the hidden manna. Okay. Fourth church, Thyatira, you can relate to the monarchy. He talks about the one whose feet are like burnished bronze. Now you have to understand, at the front of the Temple of Solomon, there were 2 pillars, the one where the priests were consecrated and the one where the kings were consecrated. And by saying that Jesus, and they were both bronze pillars, by saying that Jesus has feet that are like burnished bronze, he's saying that Jesus is both the king and the priest, the ultimate king and priest. And then it ends by saying the one who conquers, he'll give him the morning star, referencing here David, the bright morning star. Okay. Fifth church, Sardis, you can relate to the prophets. He who conquers will be clad in white garments. You see prophetic language there. And you also see the language of coming like a thief in the night. So the prophets were saying, repent, or the exile is going to happen, basically, which it did. Okay. Sixth church, Philadelphia, you can relate to the post-exilic period. He says, he who conquers, I'll make him a pillar in the temple of my God. There's a rebuilt temple. He'll keep us from the hour of trial. So you see that there. And then the 7th church, Laodicea, can relate to the New Testament. Ends by saying, he who conquers, I will grant him to sit on my throne. So this is like the 12 apostles in the New Testament, as well as other things. So there's a beautiful thing today. God bless.